This is the examination of the hidden human condition.
You're listening to the Hidden Killers Podcast.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Bruschi.
We have some very interesting courtroom audio to play for you right now. This is from this week, the 14th. It's the 15th that we're dropping this episode. This happened about 12 hours ago in the courtroom in South Carolina. Alex Murdaugh facing his financial crime accomplices in court, as Cory Fleming now faces sentencing after pleading guilty to all the charges in relation to the South Carolina grand jury indictment that was connected to the misdeeds of Alex Murdaugh and others who went along with him for that ride. Well, they're going down now, too. Murdaugh and Russell Laffitte, both present in the court for a status hearing. Laffitte, you will also remember, the former head of Palmetto State Bank, also facing charges and sentencing very, very soon. Let's go to that courtroom audio. It's about an hour long, and it features a lot of people sticking up for Cory Fleming as he faces the sentencing for his bad acts involving Alex Murdaugh.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Barbier.
Your Honor, may it please the court, your courthouse staff was nice enough to move the microphone to this side of the courtroom. And so I will have the people who would like to address the court come to that microphone if that is acceptable to the court.
Sure.
Okay. The first person that, I'm sorry, Mr. Fleming needs to speak for the court.
Yeah, we need him.
Thank you, Your Honor. As I was saying, the first speaker that I'd like to call up to the microphone is Mike McCloskey. He's a member of the Beaufort community. And also a member of the bar, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, Judge. My name is Mike McCloskey. I'm privileged to practice law in this community for 57 years. I'm also privileged to call myself a trial lawyer. I've known Cory Fleming since he first started practicing law. However, I've known his family literally since the first day I moved to Beaufort, and that was March the 3rd of 1967. I was at the hearing when Judge Gergel sentenced Cory Fleming. It was a remarkable proceeding. And the thing that made it remarkable was Cory Fleming. I remember Ms. Pinckney telling Cory that she still loved him and that she forgave him. And I never will forget his response. I don't know how many criminal cases I've handled. I don't know how many times people who had either gone to trial and who were waiting sentence. I just don't know. But I've never heard anyone, after being forgiven, respond by thanking her and then following closely thereafter. And I understand you have a transcript of that proceeding, and I invite you to see if I'm correct in my recitation. Immediately thereafter, Cory Fleming said words I've never heard from anyone in his position. I don't deserve to be forgiven. I do not deserve to be forgiven. I've never seen a man empty himself to that extent. He was thoroughly disgusted. He admitted his behavior was a betrayal of trust that was placed in him. He admitted that he had disgraced his family. He admitted that he had dishonored his friends, his profession, his family. That's the Cory I saw a little over a month, no, a little less than a month ago. That proceeding was on the 15th of last month. A little less than last month. Well, why would that be important? I've heard a lot of negative stuff about Cory Fleming. And there's no one here, his family, his friends, anybody that's here to support Cory, that supports his conduct that brought him in front of you today. They didn't support it in front of Judge Gergel on the 15th of August. However, they realize that there is great wisdom in a little piece of scripture found in the 51st Psalm, which is David's great lament after Nathan brought to his attention his great sin. A broken and contrite heart, O Lord, you will not despise. We cannot embrace Cory's conduct, but I'll tell you what all of us do embrace. We embrace Cory in his broken and contrite state. And to what purpose would we do that? Why would we do something like that? Because we see a goodness in Cory that has been covered up, but is coming to fruition now. There's been a lot of discussion about sentencing and the bad acts, rightly so, that Cory has committed. But I'm reminded that human nature and human behavior can change. Well, what is the most powerful vehicle to change human behavior and nature? It's adversity. It's struggle. We don't have our kids grow up healthy by giving them cream and ice cream all the time, cake and ice cream all the time. We subject them to adversity. Now, this adversity is brought on by Cory himself. I wonder how many of us can claim that our conduct has been so pure, so innocent, that we haven't had the chance to grow up through adversity. No, we can't excuse, justify, or defend the events that brings Cory in front of you today. But we're not going to leave him. We're going to actively participate in his restoration in this community, his recovery, his healing. And through that, I hope that the court will find some assurance that through this period of adversity in Cory's life, he will grow, change forever for the better. I thank you for the opportunity of appearing before you in behalf of my friend, Cory Fleming.
Your Honor, next, Shannon Wilkes would like to address the court.
Good afternoon, Judge. I met Cory and Eve in 1998 when I moved to Beaufort. I needed a job, and I was a young paralegal at the time, and I began to work for Cory as his paralegal. And I did so for 2.5 years. Cory was a relatively new attorney, and like I said, I was a new paralegal. But through working together, and Cory still reminds me of this today, we learned a lot from each other. We had a positive and open working relationship where he treated me like a colleague and not just his paralegal or someone who worked for him. I worked with him. Cory always treated me and his clients with respect, compassion, and kindness. I have witnessed many times firsthand the love and devotion that Cory has for his wife, Eve, his children, his parents, his extended family, and his friends. One evening during a dark and desperate time in my life, and Cory probably doesn't even remember that he did this for me, I knocked on the front door of Cory and Eve's home. When Cory opened that door, He saw me not just as his paralegal, but a friend in need. Neither one hesitated to let me in that door and give me a shoulder to cry on. I'm here today as a supporter of Cory. Being a supporter of Cory does not mean that I don't understand that he made bad choices, because I do understand. And being a supporter of Cory does not make me a victim of anything. I am proud to stand here today, and I'm proud to see that Cory has taken responsibility of his bad choices. And these are choices that he cannot change. But he can choose how to face the effects of the choices he's made now and in the future. And I believe Cory is already doing that by taking responsibility and truly being remorseful, because he is remorseful. He and I have talked on numerous occasions and have discussed our mutual Christian faith. We've shared scripture. We've shared prayer and lessons learned from this scripture. And I know through this faith, Cory will live a full life, a life full of purpose. And he has a willingness to help others find their own purpose. Thank you, Judge, for letting me speak. And I ask that you take the words that I've said into consideration in Cory's sentencing today.
Your Honor, next we have Rich Chiavella.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Rich Chiavello. Thank you for the opportunity to give me this chance to speak on behalf of my friend Cory Fleming. I met Cory 22 years ago when we both became new parents. A couple years later, we both welcomed our second child, our children. Over the years, my family and I became very close friends with Cory, his parents, his wife, his children. We spent many holidays, birthdays, and weekends together. He's the last person that I ever thought I'd be standing here talking to you about today. I've only known Cory to be a loving son, husband, father, and friend. I believe Cory to be a good man who made a bad choice. I also believe that when he returns to his family and friends, he will dedicate his life to earn the respect, trust, and admiration of all who come to know him. Your Honor, I ask that you show Cory as much leniency and mercy as the court will allow. Thank you.
Your Honor, there are several people that were here earlier who had to go. They didn't know it was going to last this long and had commitments, a very critical doctor appointment, and they left me their statements, and I'd like to read them if I could.
Are they the same ones that you emailed to me or had me to read before?
There are, Your Honor, there's one statement from a person who's also written a letter, Kevin Green, and he says much of the same things. So if Your Honor wants to simply rely on the letter.
No, you submitted them all to me to read, and I've read them, and so I don't need you to read them again if you've already done that.
It's not the same letter.
Oh, another from the same person?
It's the same person.
Okay.
Okay. And but I just wanted the court to know that there were a few other people. In addition, Your Honor, I have Ms. Denise Davis.
Your Honor, I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak on behalf of my friend Cory Fleming. I've had the privilege of knowing Cory since 2009, and I'm eager to share my insights about his character and the positive impact he has had with my family and our community. I first met Cory at the YMCA, where our shared passion for competitive running and physical fitness brought us together. Over the years, we participated in numerous local running events, forging a strong bond based on our shared interests and values. I've had the opportunity to witness firsthand Cory's dedication to the YMCA. For the past 8 years, I've overseen the YMCA's River Swim, a signature fundraiser for our Learn to Swim program. Cory, alongside his daughter, participated in the challenging 3.2-mile swim. And when I approached him for sponsorship and support of the worthy cause, he didn't hesitate. In addition to our YMCA swim, I could always count on Cory to sponsor and actively participate in a running event I chaired for the Parents Association of my son's school. He generously extended beyond financial contributions. He consistently went out of his way to help others. I can personally attest to this. I'm a single mother to 3 sons. There have been times, excuse me, when I relied on Cory's expertise to fix various issues. He never hesitated to lend a hand. One vivid example is when my outdoor shower pipe froze and started spraying water everywhere on Christmas morning. Despite the holiday festivities, Cory was there to help at a moment's notice and without hesitation. Moreover, Cory's unwavering commitment to his family is truly commendable. I've had the privilege of not only being friends with Cory, but also developing a close bond with his family. During my own challenging times, Cory and his family extended their kindness to me without hesitation. Their support and empathy served as a beacon of light through my moments of difficulty. Cory has been a guiding figure in the lives of my sons. He's been a mentor, providing them with support, advice, and empathetic ear when they needed someone to confide in. His genuine care and interest in their well-being have made him a beloved figure in our home, and we often refer to him as Uncle Cory, despite not being related by blood. Cory's character is one of generosity, acts of kindness, and a strong sense of responsibility towards his family, friends, and community. He has consistently demonstrated his commitment to making a positive impact, and his contributions have left a lasting mark on the lives of many, especially my family. I respectfully request that you consider my testimony when determining Cory's sentence. I firmly believe that his actions and genuine goodwill he has shown throughout the years are a testament to his character. I kindly ask you for your leniency, mercy, and grace in this matter. I believe Cory's positive qualities should be weighed during the sentencing process. Thank you, Judge Newman, for allowing me to speak on behalf of my friends.
Next, Your Honor, is Lisa O'Brien.
Good afternoon, Judge. I am Lisa O'Brien, and I'm a Beaufort resident, born and raised here. I met Cory and his wife and children at the Y. I taught spin there for about 16 years, and he and his family actively participated in my classes. In 2011, our oldest son was brutally attacked and beaten and robbed in his home in the middle of the night here in Port Royal. I didn't ask for help, but Cory knew my anguish. He saw it on my face, and he approached me outside after class and told me that he and his wife would do anything to help us through this process. Even though the prosecutor would take control, he would be there for us. He spent countless hours talking to us over the phone and in person and just helping us to understand what we were going to face. I've stood in one of these courtrooms at least 5 times. as the mother of a victim. Each time Cory has put himself out to be there for our family without anything asked or without any bragging or patting himself on the back for being a good person. In one of my conversations with Cory at the Y, he told me that one of the hardest things he had to do was to stand in the courtroom while people that didn't have an attorney didn't know what to say, when he could easily go up there and help them. And every day it was hard for him. And there's one more thing I want to mention. When all of this happened, we moved upstate a couple of years ago. And when all of this happened, I came down and I wanted to go into one of the classes and see my old friends. And I asked Cory if he was going to be there, and he showed up. And I told him, I said, you know, I'm not going to ask you anything about these things. I don't want you to feel pressured to ever be around us. And he stopped me in my tracks, and he said, no. I have learned from this already things about myself I didn't even realize I needed to know. The remorse was clear, and his actions to stop me and tell me that he had guilt are something I can't even explain. I didn't ask him, and he just told me. I think what I want to say most is I'm here on my own accord. I drove 3.5 hours to come. I don't feel obligated. I don't feel like I have to be here. And certainly I'm not forced to be here. I would stand up for Cory in a minute, and Eve and his family, because one thing in somebody's life that happens a couple of times does not define them. He is more, the whole picture of who he is more than this. And this is terrible, but this does not define him. And I just ask for you to consider that.
Was the assailant apprehended?
There were 5 assailants, and they were apprehended the night of the crime. Mm-hmm. They were caught by Detective Rue, and it took about 2 years to prosecute. They did all plead guilty.
How much time, what was their sentence?
It ranged from 15 years to 20 years for all 5.
15 years to 20 years each?
Yes, sir. Well, each person was sentenced with a concurrent. So they were charged with 3 things: burglary in the first degree, armed robbery, and possession of a weapon during a violent crime. The burglary first degree was 20 years for one individual, and the armed robbery 20, and 5 for the weapon. And that process matched each person down the line.
How old were they?
They ranged in ages from 23 was the oldest person. The youngest one was about a month from turning 17.
And what year was that?
2011.
Are they still in prison?
Yes, sir. The first one will be released next year.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Your Honor, next we have Laura Blue.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Laura Blue. From 13 years being in the Beaufort area, a citizen of Beaufort, South Carolina. I've known Cory as being my landlord. It's just so much I could say about this man. I have 2 children. We were homeless, living in a hotel. It was during Christmas time. We were transitioning from the hotel to the residence in which he was allowing me to rent. And when I went into the home, so much I can say about this man. He immediately shared with me that I didn't have to do the first month rent and make sure I get my kids some toys for Christmas. My son was 7, my daughter was 9. We've been in the home 13 years. My son graduated from Beaufort High School. He's now in the United States Navy. I have a 22-year-old daughter. She's currently the business manager at St. Helena in Port Royal. I have a 4-year-old grandchild that actually came into the home while we were there. I would say from landlord to family, that's how we look at him. Both of my children looks at him very highly as an uncle. He's very respected by both of them. In spite of what's going on, we talked. I've relocated to Missouri, so I flew in to speak on who he is to us as a family. My daughter spoke at the federal, and I will say this, Judge. During this time, while I was in Missouri, Cory and I talk, try to encourage him, plenty nights through texting and sending scriptures to let him know that in the Bible, God forgive us of all our sins. He asked me when I came down and visit my family here, if it was possible to just come by his home. He needed to share something with me. In spite of the media, in spite of people around me, he called me, him and his wife, went to the home. He talked with me. He shared things. He didn't go in depth or anything. He just let me know. He did something. He was very sorry about it. He just couldn't get over the hump of understanding that he has to forgive himself. I will tell you today, Judge, on behalf of my family, we truly, by no means, look at him more than just my landlord. Again, he's my family. I rest assured his family has supported me tremendously. They didn't ask me to come. They didn't beg me to. I asked them, can I please come? Can I please, every day, what can we do? Because again, like I say, this man took my family in, put a roof over my head with 2 children. And he made sure not one day, if I was late, he overcharged me. Not one day he made an eviction notice or anything. And I've been late many of times. Yet he let us stay in the home. He was ready to renovate the home right before my son was graduating. And I was working for Department of Social Service inside Child Protective Service as an investigator, not making much money. And I told him, I said, Mr. Fleming, if we leave, where could we possibly go for the next 3 months until my son graduated? He said, you know what, you guys stay here. And when he graduates, then we'll go ahead and start the renovation of the home. So I just ask that you just take into consideration what I said about this man. Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I'm not going to read the statements to them. You do have letters from Kevin Green, Jay Taylor, and Tom Miller, all who were here earlier but had to go. As I said, but at this time, I'd like my client to address the court.
Okay.
And obviously,
Judge.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, excuse me. Thank you for the opportunity to address this court. For many years, I stood in this very courtroom representing people. Many of those people had broken the law. I was very aware that one bad decision or a series of bad decisions can have life-changing and irreversible consequences. Despite knowing this firsthand, I made some terrible decisions and I broke the law. Today, I offer this court no excuses. There are no excuses. I place the blame for my actions on my shoulders, nobody else's. I never imagined standing here and being in this circumstance. I have a profound and deep disappointment in myself. It is a very difficult and constant feeling that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. Today, I'm grateful for the ability to thank the Satterfields and the Pinckneys for expressing their forgiveness to me when I was sentenced in federal court, and for letting me know that they're praying for me. It means the world to me, and it's helping me through a very difficult time. Although I've already made these remarks in federal court, I want this court to know my regrets, my failings, and my heart. And I don't think I can say how sorry I am too much to any of these people. So I'll say these words again to the Satterfield family. Your mother was a very good woman. In the aftermath of losing her so tragically, suddenly, you deserved a lawyer that had only your best interest at heart. You deserve someone to be honest with you. You deserve someone who talked with you. You deserve someone who dealt with you fairly. And you deserve someone who would not betray your trust. I did not do those things. I failed you. To Michelle Pinckney, I not only betrayed you as a client, I betrayed you as a friend. You suffered a tremendous loss that no parent should ever endure. You and your entire family were good to me. I have no words for how empty I feel when I think of how you must feel about me. You deserved much better. I failed you and I failed your family. To both the Satterfields and the Pinckneys, for these failures, I am immensely sorry. I know that an apology is inadequate, but please know that I am genuinely incredibly sorry for my treatment of you. Next, I want to apologize to my former colleagues in the South Carolina Bar, the South Carolina Supreme Court, the Office of Disciplinary Counsel. My actions have cast a negative perception on the legal profession. I understand that the public's confidence in our judicial system has eroded as a result of this case. I am deeply sorry that my actions have negatively impacted a profession that I loved and people that I care deeply for. I have permanently resigned from the South Carolina Bar because I no longer deserve the privilege of practicing amongst you. I want to apologize to my former law partners and staff. I know that my actions have caused a tremendous amount of stress, burden, and heartache on each one of you. I'm truly sorry for the pain I've caused. I'm sorry to my friends and members of the Beaufort community that I have let down. I love Beaufort. I've always considered myself lucky to live amongst this community. And I'm extremely grateful for those who have stood up for me and offered kind words that were very much needed. To my wife, my children, and my parents, I will spend the rest of my life regretting the shame and the turmoil that I've inflicted on our family. Each of you have been a tremendous source of support to me during the past 2 years. I don't feel that I deserve it, but I promise you that I will strive every day to earn back your respect and be worthy of your love. Thank you for standing by me during this very dark time. I love you so much. Your Honor, I know that I deserve to be punished for my conduct. I take full responsibility for my actions. I can assure this court that I will live the rest of my days trying to follow the lessons that I've learned, to remember what is actually important in life, time spent with my family and my friends. To know that doing things for others is how to gain fulfillment out of life. It does not come through material possessions. A lot of people have spoken to me, my friends in the community, about what I've lost in this ordeal, but I'm looking at all that I've gained. I've had to take a very hard look in the mirror. I didn't like everything that I saw. I have grown from this both spiritually and emotionally. I have taken stock in my life and realized how lucky I am. I'm incredibly grateful for my wife, my children, my family, my friends, for their support and love. I believe there were times in my life when I took these people for granted, but I'm looking at life through a new lens. When I decided to plead guilty in federal court, I didn't have any assurances of what my sentence would be there or here. I made a conscious decision to have trust in the legal system, one that I betrayed. I betrayed this system, and I am perhaps undeserving of that. I understand how difficult your role in this process is, and I sincerely thank you for the opportunity to address your court and for considering the information presented on my behalf.
Your Honor, in conclusion, I just make a very, very brief remarks. I all the courts, the time that you spent with us today, allowing us to speak and allowing the people that want to come and talk on Cory's behalf to be heard. As I said, I know Your Honor has a very difficult job in this process, and I have always observed firsthand the dignity that you treat defendants with. I would respectfully submit to you, Your Honor, that in this case, a concurrent 46-month sentence is sufficient punishment and will protect the public. It will serve as a deterrent. I believe there's already been a significant deterrent effect, but I think a sentence here will serve that purpose as well. Mr. Fleming has accepted responsibility for his bad decisions and his illegal conduct. In the process of calculating his federal sentence, there's an enhancement called abuse of position of trust. And this was calculated in to Mr. Fleming's sentencing guidelines, and he was held accountable for the abuse of position of trust. So that's what he did. He abused his position of trust and abused his law license, and he's taken full accountability for that. You have heard about his worst days, and I hope you will also know that those bad decisions do not define his life. One of the things the court always considers in these matters is whether or not somebody has a criminal history. Mr. Fleming had no criminal history prior to this case. He has made, I would submit, significant efforts already at rehabilitation. And he's going to continue to do that as he serves his sentences. He has expressed extreme remorse. He only seeks a chance, Your Honor, to serve his time and then rebuild his life. And while to be able to be released from prison and still have time to contribute to society. Your Honor, in conclusion, I would submit that a 46-month concurrent sentence will encompass all of the illegal conduct to which he has acknowledged, including the Pinckney case, which I discussed was already considered. The Pinckneys were victims in the federal case. Their loss amount was calculated, their restitution was ordered, and they were treated under the Mandatory Victims Act.
but a 46-month concurrent sentence will reflect the seriousness of this offense. It will promote respect for the law, and it will provide just punishment. And I thank you again, Your Honor, for all of your consideration and for you taking the time to hear us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. I know this has been a long proceeding, and I'm not going to talk for a long time. Use of a position of trust. Your Honor was asking one of the people that spoke on behalf of Mr. Fleming about those terrible crimes that happened to that person and the ages of those people. And we don't know now what their lives were like, their backgrounds were like, the opportunities they had, the privileges they had. And there was very significant accountability for that, for those young men, and rightfully so. But there has to be significant accountability here too. One thing you didn't hear a lot about, Your Honor, was the facts of what Mr. Fleming, even to this point, actually claimed. What we know is that when he first got called by Lee Cope, he said, oh, the Satterfields, but he didn't disclose, oh, I was colluding with Alec, oh, I'd stolen checks, oh, I'd been stealing from Miss Pinckney prior to that. He didn't disclose any of that. In fact, for the longest time, he claimed he was a victim. And then when the state grand jury called him red-handed, he then changed and started to say, out of the generosity of who I am, I cut my fee in half. And so if I did steal, they still were better off than they would have been if I'd taken my full fee. Ms. Barbier read from our memo, and she left out one clause about what the state's position is. And that clause is that what Fleming didn't realize, because he knew that the scheme as usual depended on some significant portion of the funds going to the family so that that sleight of hand works. They're too focused on this right here to know that this is going on behind them. And what Mr. Fleming, when finally pushed against the wall, his final version that went to federal court with, essentially this, Your Honor, that every single one of those forged checks that he cut from his trust account, the $403,000 one, the $2.9 million one, and the $118,000 one, that he believed that Alec, that those boys, that the Satterfield family was going to get every dime of that. And the only thing he was willing to concede once he had finally been pushed against the wall, time after time and revelation after revelation, was that he had withheld that $105,000 in fake prosecution expenses for Alec. And the interesting thing about that is that for you to accept that to be true, what his version is that Alec never even came and got that. Because as we know, there was $113,000 still in his trust account when everything came to light. So what he is trying to admit is that yes, I colluded with Alex Murdaugh, but I didn't think that he had gotten one thin dime of that money. And when the state, and she made some discussions about one agency deferring to another, and she mentioned press releases, and of course, as always, when the state grand jury first indicted Mr. Murdaugh and others, that's going back in November of 2021. You know, in a press release, we're going to thank supporting agencies, but she's had those transcripts. She's read the extensive testimony that we presented from the witnesses in the state grand jury in November of 21, and December of 21, and January of 22, and February of 22, and March of 22, April of 22, and on and on. She's read the information about her client that was gathered by state grand jury subpoenas during that time. And when Mr. Fleming sat down and told that story that I believed that every dime was going to those Satterfield family. That when I was at my dirtiest, my motives were the most pure. That because I had cut my fee in half, even if I'd stolen money, they were still going to be better off than they would have been. And the state said, that makes no sense. And it makes no sense for all that I've detailed for you here today. That course of conduct that shows that he knew what was going on, he was instrumental in it. And so when he talks about accepting responsibility, he's not accepting true responsibility. And that is why there needs to be accountability in state court. That is why that when the state said, hold on, Mr. Fleming, that doesn't fit with the facts, that doesn't fit with common sense, that doesn't fit with all we know about how this went down. Mr. Fleming, and we said, give us some more information, give us some more time. Mr. Fleming instead went down the street and made a deal to just bypass accountability in this courtroom, which this is where the affront occurred. Ms. Barbier went in great detail, and Mr. Fleming said it too, about how he pled guilty in federal court with no deals. No deals. And he talks about how the Pinckneys were considered in the pre-sentencing report, which of course the state doesn't have. We don't know what was in that. But what he leaves out, when they make this great presentation to you, how they pled with no deals, and therefore that's enough. Just let the feds handle it. We just thumbed our nose at the state, thumbed our nose at our obligations in the agreement we signed, and went down the street. What he leaves out is that he was allowed to plead to a single lesser offense, one charge, 0 to 5 years. If you had done one charge of what it should have been, that's a 20-year offense. And even Judge Gergel in the plea transcript on page 75, when they were trying to say, well, there's no deals, we didn't do a substantial or a downward departure, says, well, in some ways, you've already given him a 5K, which is a downward departure motion, by allowing him to plead to the less serious offense. One charge for 0 to 5 years is not enough, Your Honor. It's not enough for the reasons that I expressed to you. It's not enough because of the difference between what was admitted to in federal court and what we have exposed here today. It's not enough because of the difference that today is where there's the first real accountability, a real conviction for Pamela Pinckney. And it's not enough because the state judicial system needs its say for those who abuse it. I said before, a lawyer should not have a decade of conduct and get one-stop shopping. For that reason, we submit there should be a lead sentence for the Satterfields and a consecutive lead sentence for the Pinckneys. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Well, I guess we've been here listening to argument and presentations concerning this, goodness, about 4 hours or more. And prior to that time, I was submitted voluminous materials to review. The one thing that I did not review is Judge Gergel's transcript. As much as I admire him and his capabilities as a federal judge and the great work that he does, I don't defer to the federal court system for in making my decisions. I practiced law for 24 years and have been a judge for 23 years. During my time as a prosecutor, I've prosecuted police chiefs, probation officers, professors, and as a judge, I've sentenced church secretaries, preachers, professors, law enforcement folks. But until I came down to this 14th Circuit in March, I never sentenced a lawyer. And that lawyer was sentenced to consecutive life sentences. Now I have a lawyer, co-defendant, colleague of his, facing 195 years in prison. In addition to dealing with and sentencing all those folks, I've certainly dealt with my share of grand larceny cases, people who might steal an automobile, facing 10 years in prison, a shoplifter who, after the third offense, they're facing 10 years in prison. And I've had my share of sentencing people like the assailants who were convicted of the crimes that was mentioned, and dished out a lot of time to many of them. So this is my second time in these 47 years having to deal with an issue of sentencing a lawyer. And I cannot imagine a more devastating, anything more precedent. This is unprecedented. This is unimaginable. This is, I think, the greatest crime for a lawyer in the history of the state of South Carolina. Certainly in the number of years being faced and the impact of the crimes on the citizens of the state. I cannot imagine anyone going to a lawyer in South Carolina at this moment in time and having complete trust in what that lawyer says to them. And of course, part of my years of practice, I've had clients come to me with, and they come and said that they didn't know how much money they got on their case, that they went to the lawyer's office and the check was turned over and they just was asked to sign the check. So they came to me to find out how much money they got in their case. But this is totally unprecedented. I cannot, there's no way there was a case in this state where the amount of thievery exceeded what's occurred in this case. Now, the presentations on behalf of Mr. Fleming were certainly inspiring. Reminded me of the revival that we had at our church last week. It reminded me of funeral services that I've had to attend, particularly within the last year. And I've heard a lot of testimonies, so much so that they can go on and on in churches, at a funeral. And so we ask people to limit their comments to 2 minutes because everyone has so many good things to say. And most folks reminded me of what was said in federal court, sort of a disregard to the dual sovereignty of the state court. I didn't read Judge Gergel's transcript. He's in a different system, a different sovereignty. I've never deferred to a federal court to guide my sentence as a state court judge. Now, for all of the great things that was said about Mr. Fleming, and I made the funeral reference because it's as if he's no longer with us, as if, we're at a funeral, and that he will not have an opportunity to redeem himself. He will not have an opportunity to do good deeds. And someone mentioned that the things that he was able to share his tale with others, well, he'll have an opportunity to share his tale and his story and the consequences of his choices with people that he will meet that will be in dire need of his counsel and advice. Now, since coming here for Murdaugh and doing that trial in March, and I was back here 2 weeks ago for a trial, another trial in Colleton County. A mother who had been teacher of the year in the school system there left her 13-year-old totally handicapped and disabled child in a car beginning at 11 a.m. when it was 91 degrees outside, and left that child in the car until about 5 or 6 p.m. And she's constantly in and around the car with her boyfriend. And a climatologist testified that the temperature in that car got up to 139 degrees. And you're talking about remorse, and the testimonies and presentations over this mother and her mistake. She was on methamphetamine with her boyfriend. As remorseful, I cannot imagine anyone giving me a presentation of a mother who loved her child and who went wayward and more concerned about using drugs and pleasing her boyfriend than caring for her child. And she got 37 years in prison, convicted of murder. That was 2 weeks ago, here in the same 14th Circuit. And the folks who came to talk with him and said, she loved her child. Nothing she wouldn't do for her child. She had her child in the Special Olympics. But she abandoned the child. And so when I'm listening to Mr. Bamberg talk about Mr. Pinckney, Hakeem Pinckney, I'm thinking of that same type of vulnerability that child had. He was a child at the time, wasn't he?
He was a late teen, I believe.
Yeah. And so he placed his trust in a respected member of the bar, a very respected member of this community. And I could tell that by all of the folks here. Sometimes say that there isn't very much between any of us. We all have good and we all have bad, and certainly everyone was here to tell me about all the good in Mr. Fleming, but we're dealing with the consequences of the bad, and that is as bad as it gets in this case for a lawyer who has a prior record. He has no prior convictions, but when you carry on a scheme of over a decade, that's a record. Record that did not result in charges or convictions, but a record of his life. And as bad as it was with Mr. Pinckney, then we moved to the Satterfields. Again, vulnerable people. So I imagine, and I know that many of the friends and family and colleagues were totally shocked, not at what the good Cory Fleming has done over a period of time, but this Cory Fleming in these cases. And quite frankly, when the people come to me and wanted to lay the burden on me, said, "Judge, please be lenient," that's not my responsibility. I believe in justice and mercy, but leniency is not part of Micah, the scripture. Facing 195 years in prison. Anything else before I impose my sentence? Right, Mr. Fleming, if you'll come around for sentencing. My heart bleeds for you because I have no doubt of the quality of human being that you are, as reflected by all of the positive comments. But you must suffer the consequences of your actions in these cases that you're standing before me for. And tempering justice with mercy. It's my responsibility to impose a sentence. And there are so many. If I were to spend time here now imposing a sentence on each of these indictments individually, we'd be here for a few hours probably. So suffice it to say, with regard to the Satterfields, and need my clerk here will take notes for me. On count 10, where the exposure is 0 to 5, the sentence is 5 years. I wrote insurance. Is that insurance fraud?
Yes, sir.
That is count number or indictment number.
Count 11, Your Honor.
Count 11. And the exposure is 0 to 10. The sentence is 10 years. On the breach of trust with the 10-year possibility or exposure, the sentence is 10 years. On the money laundering, where the exposure is 0 to 20 years, the sentence is 10 years. On the 5-year breach of trust, the sentence is 5 years. On the 5-year money laundering, I believe it is 5 years. And on the computer crime, the sentence is 5 years. And each of those will run concurrent with each other. As to the breach of trust involving the Pinckneys, counts 5 and 9, is it?
Yes, sir.
Where the exposure is 5 years, the sentence is 5 years. The 30-day breach of trust, count 6, the sentence is time served. On the conspiracy charge, sentence is 5 years. On the breach of trust, where the exposure is 10 years, the sentence is 10 years. And that sentence will run consecutive to the sentence that you're currently serving. All the sentences otherwise will run concurrent with each other. I'm going to defer any restitution hearings. I believe it's just too convoluted for me to get a true handle on what the state is seeking and what should be ordered, and I tend to think that it's, well, I don't want to prejudge whether it's necessary or not, but I'm going to defer any ruling regarding any restitution. I'm not sure whether the state is actually seeking it, whether there's an actual loss, if there is, whether the parties can agree. We can have a separate hearing solely dealing with restitution if necessary. As the sentence of the court, I give you best wishes, Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So I need to take time to work with all this. Were you following everything? You want to put the years on it? Yeah. Anything further here today, Mr. Waters?
No, sir. That would conclude the state grand jury matters for today, Your Honor.
All right. Court will be adjourned.
You're consuming the Hidden Killers podcast.
Want more? Start binging on all of our true crime podcasts right now through Apple Podcasts and get an ad-free experience when you sign up to be a True Crime Today Premium Plus member exclusively on Apple Podcasts.
More of the Hidden Killers podcast dropping soon.
Press subscribe now.